This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to Season 2 of Podyssey. An enormous amount of work goes into this project that would simply not have been possible without its paying supporters. As a thank you, each fallow week between the fortnightly episodes will now offer a live online event for you, a Zoom session in which you get to quiz both me and the show's experts on any aspect of the episode just gone. You'll also get an illustrated guide to each topic with a lot of the art that we discuss, links to the music, interesting essays, book and film recommendations, and occasional surprises. To get all of this, log on to ko-fi.com/Podyssey and become a monthly subscriber for as little as $5, making sure the system has the right contact email for you. If you cannot afford to subscribe, or you cannot make a particular live Q&A, worry not. Each of those sessions will be released as an audio episode a few days later. Persephone and Cassandra, Atlas and Prometheus, oligarchy, plutocracy, satire, irony, hubris, nemesis, pathos, catharsis, sour grapes and blowing hot and cold, opening Pandora's box and leaving no stone unturned, the myths, tales and concepts of ancient Greece echo and reach into every aspect of modern life. Often misunderstood, frequently romanticised, and sometimes deliberately twisted. To understand their origins and truth is to get a real glimpse into the universal themes that connect us to the past and to each other. This is their story.
Άμα θέλεις μάνα δίρε με, άμα θέλεις μάνα δίρε με, πάλι εγώ θα βγαίνω στην αυλή για να βλέπω τον Αλεξανδρή.
Welcome to Podyssey. I'm Alex Andreou. Each week we take one myth, one concept, person, place, theme from ancient Greece, take it apart, figure out its inner workings, trace its tentacles, juice it for wisdom, update, reconfigure, and put it back together all shiny and new. Now, if Prometheus has been given perhaps too easy a time by men who see themselves as geniuses who are above the rules, it is all balanced out by how harshly a woman accused of breaking the rules has been treated. I am talking, of course, about his mythical counterpart, or to be more precise, antidote, Pandora. Our story begins right where the last one ended. Zeus, outraged with Prometheus for stealing fire and giving it to man, has punished him by chaining him to Mount Caucasus to be a cold cuts, all-you-can-eat buffet for symbolic birds of prey. But coming back to Olympus, he is still fuming. He knows Prometheus is right. There is no taking back the knowledge of how to make fire. Still, he wants to make the little vermin suffer. But how? The Olympians need humans to worship them. Without them, the gods are just a soft rock band in an empty stadium. And their favourability ratings in recent polls have taken a dive after the whole fire incident, so he needs to be subtle. Zeus is not good at subtle. He's good at thunder and lightning. He's great at turning into really smutty animals. He is excellent at deltoids, but subtle he is not. He goes to his den and starts to think really hard with an expression worn only by men who are excellent at deltoids when they think really hard. After a few minutes, Queen Hera pops her head round the door. "Zeus, darling, can you come put the thing up on the thing? Isn't that why we got the little step ladder?" Don't make me get the stepladder out. It will take you 20 seconds. All right, in a bit. He goes back to constipation face. Not 5 minutes later, Aphrodite and Athena burst in. Papa, Athena has taken my golden apple again. Athena, give your sister her apple. I haven't got it. Anyway, it's not her apple. It belongs to the fairest. Don't you start that again. You are such a... Athena, do not be difficult. Give her the apple and leave me be. Liar, baby. Right. Back to plotting his revenge. What is it now? Don't you take that tone with me, dear. It was Hera again. Come put the thing up on the thing. I just want some peace. Oh, I'm sorry. Why didn't you just say? After you put the thing up on the thing. And when you're done, you can give your mother her tea. She says I'm trying to poison her again. Oh, we're not back on that, are we? We are, I'm afraid. She thinks I'm trying to feed her rocks wrapped in swaddling. What is that about? Oh, and when that's out of the way, you can do something about the front lawn, which is looking like Artemis's armpits. Then you can have some peace. Maybe. Suddenly, an idea pops into Zeus's head. What if he gave humans the gift of family life? Oh, Hera, I could snog you. You're even more annoying than usual today.
Si avesse fatta che l'hai fatta a me, stammo d'avesse accisa.
You see, I should explain that when Prometheus made man and gave man fire, that was not shorthand for humans. When Hesiod explains about the 5 ages of man, of which this is the 3rd, it is quite literal. At this point, there are only mortal men around. What the long-term plan exactly was there, I'm not sure.
Femmina, tu sei una mala femmina, chi stucchi fatta chiagnere, lacrime e infamità.
So off Zeus goes to Hephaestus, his brother and Olympus' sort of handyman, who is at his workshop inside a volcano on the island of Limnos. Hey, brother. Oh, come off it. I just gave you a big batch of lightning last week. Can't all be gone. You have got to stop smiting all the time. No, that's not why I'm here. I'm after something special. Oh, yeah? What can I do you for?
Te serve per ingannare, femmina, tu sia più bella femmina.
I'm a little worried about men. They're very lonely. They've got us, they've got each other, they've got dogs. I hear they're getting on very well with dolphins. I had something different in mind. Their equivalent of goddesses up here. A bride. Oh, you mean with the hair and the eyes and the lips and the, you know. Can you do it? It's going to cost you. And so Hephaestus gets to work with gusto rarely seen before. He swears and shapes, mutters and moulds, he curses and caresses, giggles and glazes, until finally one night Zeus walks into his workshop and sees Jane Russell standing on a plinth. This is some of your best work, brother. Oh, this isn't your one. This is another commission for this bloke. Came in a couple of weeks before. And the name of this bloke? Bob. Bob. Zeus throws a dust sheet over the automaton and hops it back to Olympus, where he invites all the gods to an emergency meeting. I have asked you here today to help with a very special project. I feel bad over how things have gone with mortals, and I want to make it up to them. To that end, I have commissioned Hephaestus to produce a prototype for a new race of companions for them, and I would like you to give her a gift each, so that we may make her as splendid a consort as we are to each other up here. What is he up to? Are you okay with this? Athena whispers to Hera. Listen, as long as he is not turning himself into an otter and chasing some water nymph, I can live with it. So up steps Demeter and grants her fertility. Apollo gives her charisma. The 3 graces give her glamour, a zest for life and a sense of occasion. The muses imbue her with artistic flair. Aphrodite steps up. Athena nudges Hera. I bet you 50 euros she says beauty and allure. Papa! Athena, do not be difficult. Sorry. I grant her beauty and allure. Wow, didn't see that coming. Papa!
Athena!
And every deity makes its way to the woman and gives her something special, like banknotes pinned on a Balkan bride. Except Artemis, of course, who gives her a massive leg of venison with a note pinned on it that reads 120 degrees overnight, low and slow is the key. Then Zeus asks Hermes to shape her mind. Sorry, interjects Athena. I was going to do that. That was going to be my gift. Hermes will just turn her into a deceiver and a troublemaker like him.
Oh, well, says Zeus, you can give her something else. You can give her weaving and embroidery.
Weaving and embroidery. I am goddess of wisdom, knowledge, military strategy, education, reason, and you want me to teach her needlepoint.
Athena, don't be difficult.
Okay, then. Done. I threw in decoupage for nothing.
I bet beauty and allure don't look too shabby now.
Oh, shut up.
You shut up, bimbo. Anorak.
Meanwhile, while Zeus breathes life into the world's first android over Mount Caucasus, Epimetheus has gone to visit his brother Prometheus. As he approaches, the sight he is confronted with is wretched. Prometheus's body is twisted onto a rock and chained there while an eagle pecks at a gaping wound under his chest, tearing pieces off his liver. Prometheus. Hello, stranger. Oh, brother, what have they done to you? Hey, none of that, please. It's not so bad. Shoo. Shoo! You see, it occasionally leaves me alone when it's had its fill. I am so sorry. It was an honest mistake. You didn't force me to do what I did, and I don't regret it one bit. You have nothing to feel bad about. Yeah, I do. I gave that bird its talons and beak. Pah! At least it's quick and clean. Imagine the duck-billed platypus trying to eat my liver. I miss you. Is there anything I can do? Couple of audiobooks? Some Sudoku? What? I'm only kidding. Listen, there is something you can do. All this will blow over in a couple of millennia, I promise. But right now, Zeus has a real bee in his bonnet about all this, so I want you to be very careful around him. Do not believe anything he says. Watch out for traps and stratagems, and under no circumstances are you to accept any gift from him. Okay, repeat it. Careful, lies, stratagems, no gifts. Good lad. Epimetheus walks down the mountain repeating, careful, lies, traps, stratagems, no gifts. But by the time he gets home, Hermes is already waiting for him outside. Oh, hey, Hermes. Hello. Have I got a surprise for you? Prepare for your life to change, you lucky boy. Wait, it's not a starry gem, is it? What? No, it's a gift from Zeus. Oh, no gifts. No, siree. I've been warned about this. No gifts under any circumstances. Her name is Pandora, Hermes says as he steps to one side to reveal the woman standing behind him. No gifts, I know your game. Hello, Pandora.
Hello, what's your name?
Pandora.
Oh, that will get confusing.
I mean, it'll come to me. What is happening? Look, the old man felt terrible about the whole mess, and he knows how lonely and lost you must be without your brother, so you wanted to make up for it. Created a companion for you, a bride. No, I was told in no uncertain terms no gifts were... So, Pandora. Hi. Her name means all the gifts. Well, my brother didn't say anything about accepting all the gifts. What am I saying? I cannot marry a goddess.
Oh, you won't. The moment I become yours, I become mortal. But I don't care one jot.
Oh, one more thing. He wants you to have this box. Why? You can't take a bride with no dowry. It's tradition. Oh, it's very decent of him. There is only one rule. You two are never, ever to open it.
Well, then it's not much of a dowry, is it? It's just another thing to dust.
It is what it is, Hermes says as he flies away. My name's Epimetheus, he finally manages.
Hello, Epimetheus. I might just call you husband.
I might just like that very much.
So, husband, what do you think is in the box?
The rest, you know. Happiness makes time pass quickly. Laughter, sex, the occasional argument, more sex, a bit of needlepoint. What's in the box? Weeks turn to months. Love goes from acetylene torch to warm hearth, as it often does. Seasons come and fly away. What's in the box? Routine, comfort, familiarity, intimacy, understanding. A bit less sex and a lot more needlepoint. Months turn to years. What's in the box? The house is quiet now, and that question seems to be all that remains, getting between them like a creepy lodger. What's in the box? Pressing on them like barometric pressure. What's in the box? Until it will no longer be denied. Just a peek, she says one Sunday afternoon. Disease, pestilence, grief, vanity, pain, sadness, violence, hate. Every dread flies out of that box and spreads across the land like a noxious vapour. Zeus, somewhere up there, smiles. Gotcha. She slams the lid shut. What's in the box? He asks. She takes his hand and places it palm open on her belly.
We shall call her Pyrrha. It means burning flame.
That's the story. The story as it has reached most of us anyway, passed from the one guy who hated women to the next, and the next, an alchemical process of centuries that keeps refining the venom, drip by drip, until it distills pure misogyny. The story is, of course, a lie. More than any other, Pandora's tale demands deconstruction because it makes no sense even on its own terms. When a story lacks internal logic, one must look for the external factors pressing on it, twisting it out of shape. Even if we take it at face value, exactly who is to blame other than Zeus? He orchestrates the entire episode to the smallest detail. In a short, constructed narrative like a myth, there is no fat, no extraneous elements. Russian folklorist Vladimir Prop's 1928 Morphology of the Folktale is taught in media studies to this day. It is a cataloguing of the elements and structure of stories in which he posits that certain elements of storytelling are paired, two functions acting as a single unit. Separation must be resolved with reunification. There is no point constructing a quest unless someone undertakes it. In precisely the same way, an interdiction is just a prelude to transgression. A prohibition in a narrative structure only exists to be broken. Without its violation, there is no story. In that sense, whatever else Hesiod's telling of Pandora might be, it is also the world's first don't look in the basement horror story. I spoke to cultural historian Debbie Chalice.
If you're told not to do something, that is what you want to do. And I think that's how the box becomes as important, if not more important than Pandora, becomes this icon. In every Gothic story, you want to go into the place that you're told not to go into. Jane Eyre wants to go into the wing of Fordfield Hall that she's told she shouldn't go to. Every Gothic horror is around a house or a building where you can't go into a room. That kind of idea of, you shouldn't walk down that passageway, you shouldn't do that, but you want to do it. So the box becomes the thing that releases horror and releases fear, that releases all these superstitious, supernatural things that might come out and torment you. In Jane Eyre, it's madness, of course, and it's the idea of enslavement, and there's a link to Madeira, and there's a link to the sexuality of Mr. Rochester and her own, and all of these things that come out of this sort of Gothic attic. So, yeah, it is the red button that must not be pressed, but you're going to press it. There was a children's cartoon, which I used to love in the 80s, called Trapdoor. And I'll send you the theme tune. And it's like, don't you open that trapdoor? And there's like lots of things that come out of it because the trapdoor's always going to be opened.
Don't you open that trapdoor? You're a fool if you dare. Stay away from that trapdoor. 'Cause there's something down there.
The trapdoor never opened is a narrative negative space. The trapdoor not opened yet is full of endless possibilities, usually terrible ones. I spoke to expert on the classics in pop culture, Amanda Potter.
In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Tesseract is a cube-shaped holder that contains Infinity Stones, which hold limitless energy. The Tesseract drives the plot in a number of Marvel films, designed by the villain Thanos for the power the stones provide. Here the box is not a container for evil, but the people who desire it often have evil purposes. The puzzle box in the Hellraiser franchise opens up a portal to a Hell universe. This is a world full of horror and home of the monstrous Cenobites, formerly humans who torture human souls. In the dark crime thriller Seven from 1995, opening the box actually releases the seventh deadly sin.
Put the gun down.
I saw you with the box. What was in the box?
Because I envy your normal life.
Put the gun down, David.
It seems that envy is my sin.
Oh, what's in the box?
Give me the gun. He just told you.
You lie! Shut up!
That's what he wants. He wants you to shoot him.
No!
She begged for her life, Detective.
Shut up!
She begged for her life.
Shut up.
And for the life of the baby inside of her.
Shut up!
The serial killer John Doe, played by Kevin Spacey, puts the head of Tracy, Gwyneth Paltrow, the pregnant wife of Detective David Mills, in a box. Mills is unable not to kill the killer, as the killer anticipated. This is to represent the final of the seven deadly sins, in this case, wrath. Here the woman has no blame and her death is caused by the men around her. It's men who open the box and see the horror within, and we the viewers can only imagine what that looks like.
Now the storyteller may decide to reveal the contents of the box to us, the audience, before the principals in the story, opting for suspense instead of shock, as Hitchcock often argued, or to never reveal the contents and leave us to imagine them, as Fincher does in Seven, or Tarantino with a briefcase in Pulp Fiction. The action may take place inside the box, as in Phone Booth or Buried, with the protagonist trying to escape its horrors. Other times, like in the Cube or Escape Room franchises, the known horrors inside the box might actually be preferable to the ones that lurk on the other side of the door. Francisco Cilea's Adriana Lecouvreur contains one of the more unusual deaths in opera. Adriana receives a little casket from her lover Maurizio. She opens it, of course. It contains the very posy of violets, now dead, that she gave him when they first met. Thinking this is a sign of being jilted, Adriana sings one of the most devastating laments. Poveri fiori, poor little flowers. Just like your perfume, she says, as she throws the flowers on the fire, let me erase the mistake I made that day. But Adriana's real mistake was opening the box, which was really sent by her love rival and contained a deadly toxin that will kill Adriana with agonizing pain just as Maurizio returns to her. Whether their cabinet in Dr. Caligari, the lost ark in Raiders, or the game in Jumanji, the exploding lunchbox in Con Air with "Do Not Open" written on it, or Pandora's lunchbox in Sesame Street, which unleashes a giant rolling bean wrap, an apple juice box that squirts everyone, and a bunch of flying tortilla chips. There is something completely inevitable about a thing being used in exactly the way it is meant to be used. That is why such items are exceptionally effective as traps, because they have only one use. A police box has only one use. You open the door and walk in. And it is that use which reveals it to be anything but.
In the Doctor Who episode, the Pandorica opens, followed by the Big Bang, with Matt Smith as the Doctor in 2010. The Pandorica is a version of Pandora's box hidden beneath Stonehenge. The Doctor's curious to find out what's inside. He's heard that this is the mightiest warrior of all time, or it could be the most terrifying being in the world. This terrifying being turns out to be the Doctor himself. He's the greatest evil. His enemies imprison him in the box. But the box can also be used for good as well as evil. The episode was written by Stephen Moffat, who is a Doctor Who fan, but also a classics fan. And he wrote this story about Amy being also a classics fan. She, as a child, had the book of Pandora's Box. She had a book about Romans. She fell in love with a man who actually was a Roman for many years. When the Doctor escapes and Amy Pond, his assistant, is shot, the box can be used to save her life. She's sealed in the box in the past. The box is looked after by Rory as a soldier, and she's revived in the future when her child self approaches the box in a museum.
Just like the apple we discussed a few episodes ago that only truly becomes an apple once a bite has been taken from it, a box might as well be a block of wood until it is opened. A door is not really a door until one steps through it. A music box only becomes fully itself when wound up. A magic lamp is just a lamp until it is rubbed. A button must be pressed and a lever pulled. So ubiquitous is this and so well understood that it can be subverted for comic effect, as in Volume 2 of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Now, whatever you do, don't push this button, because that will set off the bomb immediately and we'll all be dead. Now, repeat back what I just said.
I'm Groot.
No! No, that's the button that will kill everyone. Try again.
I'm Groot.
No, that's exactly what you just said. How's that even possible? Which button is the button you're supposed to push? Point to it. No!
As Terry Pratchett wrote in Thief of Time, if you put a large switch in some cave somewhere with a sign on it saying, "End of the world switch, please do not touch," the paint wouldn't even have time to dry. The prohibition not heeded has arguably become the most enduring narrative device. In horror, the trope is deliciously known as schmuckbait. In 2011's meta creature feature The Cabin in the Woods, the rules are actually explained by the people who run the titular cabin.
Well, we just get them in the cellar. They take it from there.
No, they have to make the choice of their own free will. Otherwise, the system doesn't work. It's like the Harbinger. It's this creepy old, practically wears a sign, "You will die." Why do we put them there? The system. They have to choose to ignore him, and they have to choose what happens in the cellar. Yeah, we rig the game as much as we need to, but in the end, they don't transgress.
They can't be punished.
Maria Tatar, in her analysis of the Grimm's fairy tales, asks the reader to reflect on the ways in which an interdiction like "don't look into this one room" comes perilously close to being a tantalizing proposal. But why are we compelled to break rules? I talked to psychoanalyst Dr. Ruth Smith.
There are different psychological interpretations for rule breaking and why we do it. The idea of the prohibition narrative, that if a rule is set, then we must instinctively want to break it. So psychoanalytic theory suggests that it's our inner conflict with authority, that we are unconsciously rebelling against internalized parental figures. From that perspective, breaking rules can be a way for us to grow up, essentially, for us to assert our own autonomy and to react against and push against overly strict internal or external controls. We see this all the time. So it's in child development. When a child is about 2, what we call the terrible twos is actually a child learning that they are a separate being from their parent. And they are, in their own way, pushing the rules, pushing the boundaries to see how far they can go. And it happens again in teenagers. It's a necessary step of development. So in this way, rule breaking isn't a destructive thing to do. It's actually an instructive thing to do because it teaches us about ourselves and society and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so it can be a positive thing. Jung, on the other hand, saw rule breaking as the shadow self, that darker side of ourself, pushing into our consciousness, pushing into our awareness. It's our own way of, again, becoming an individual, again, growing up. So breaking rules can become a symbolic act of self-discovery and confronting our unconsciousness. I see this all the time in therapy as well, this concept of self-sabotage. And oftentimes people see self-sabotage as an incredibly destructive thing, but we can take lessons from it. Why are we being self-destructive, which in a way is breaking our own rules or rules that we've imposed upon ourselves? The reason we do this, sabotage ourselves, is to reinforce a narrative perhaps that we've carried about ourselves or we've been told about ourselves. I will always fail at what I do. It's going to happen inevitably, so let's just make it happen. And an aspect of rule breaking I think people aren't conscious of as much is the idea that it's a release for anxiety. If you know you're not supposed to do something, if you think the bad thing is going to happen anyway, well then let's just make the bad thing happen and at least it's out the way because I know how to deal with that. I can deal with the chaos. I don't know how to deal with anxiety.
Yet each time the one in control is not the schmuck, but whoever filled the box, made the jar, built the house, imprisoned the genie, designed the trap. That is why magical objects in storytelling are so often nothing objects, as Jeanette Winterson calls them in One Aladdin, Two Lamps, often conspicuously so. The Holy Grail is just a wooden cup. The flying carpet is dusty and tattered. The orb in Buffy sold as a paperweight. The wardrobe to Narnia could not be more ordinary. And Tolkien's one true ring of power is just a plain band. The entire episode is Zeus's punishment for Prometheus giving humans knowledge. He's using that gift of curiosity, our greatest asset, against us. Pandora is, in this sense, the spring via which the trap is activated, the mechanism, quite literally, made to order. She's a grown woman, but also an innocent. The world is entirely new to her. She's a child compelled to grab, pull, squeeze, taste, and open everything in front of her. She's given curiosity and a puzzle which she's prohibited from solving. So why is she blamed? First, her story is an example of what is known as a theodicy, from theos, God, and diki, judgment. It is a very specific kind of myth which tries to answer the question, why does God allow pain, misery, and evil to exist? It tries to answer that question without upsetting the god by suggesting he cocked up or implying he might be sadistic. So it is by design a search for someone to blame other than Zeus. Now, depending on the storyteller's point of view, the answer might be it's Satan's fault, or to test our faith, or we do it to ourselves because we have free will, or it is only through adversity that we can exercise virtue. Hesiod's answer is it's women's fault. Why that is his answer is not exactly a mystery. Hesiod hates women. I don't mean in the historical context he reflects how poorly women were treated back then, no. Even for his time, his account feels personal and bitter. Throughout what survives of his, he does not miss an opportunity to volunteer some rant that explains how all women are liars, or cheaters, or bitches, or lazy, or greedy, or will eat you out of house and home. Hesiod is the original incel.
There is not much left of the Greek writer Hesiod. He's from about the time sort of just after Homer, writes about myth. It's where we get a lot of the original sources for the coming of the gods, that kind of thing. But there isn't very much. There's the Theogony and there's works and days. So it is striking that Pandora features in both of the extant passages we have from him. And in one, there's just the story told. And in the other, she is the quintessential shrew. And there's less made of her creation, because she's not, in some versions, she's not actually a woman. She's created by the gods to be sent as a punishment. What do you call it? A drag equivalent of a woman. In Hesiod, she becomes everything that is wrong about women. You're basically lucky if you get a decent wife. And she is everything that is wrong. The misogyny just drips off the page. Ancient Greece is not known for its equality and embracing of women. But even by ancient Greek standards, it is misogynistic. And it's really sad that it's also become one of the texts that has fueled Red Pill, the incel movement, this idea that actually you're lucky if you get a good one. If you're not liked by women, well, it's their problem, not your problem. You don't need to change yourself. You need to change them, or you need to have power over them. And it is one of the texts, unfortunately, Hesiod is one of the authors that has been appropriated and fueling misogyny now, fueling basically hatred against women and girls, hatred at anything that isn't seen as however masculinity is defined.
Nothing in other contemporary accounts supports Hesiod's version. In fact, Hesiod's first version does not really support his second, more detailed one. Even her name might be a spin. Hesiod tells us that it means all gifted. Why is Hesiod telling contemporaries who speak the same language what that fairly plain composite means? Many scholars suggest that a more natural interpretation would be all-giving. Aescholium in Aristophanes' comedy The Birds speaks of Pandora, the earth who provides all of life's essentials. Pausanias describes how the statue of Athena, that was the final destination of pilgrims to the Acropolis in Athens, stood on a plinth depicting Pandora emerging from the earth. Babrius' telling of the Aesopian version talks of a foolish man as the one who lifts the jar's lid. Nothing from antiquity supports Hesiod's version. None of the Roman authors who loved to embellish these stories picked it up. Everything we have from the time or near the time speaks of a totally different Pandora. I sought the advice of archaeologist Alexandra Angeletaki-Rö.
Scenes of Pandora in ancient vase painting are pretty rare. Only a handful are known from the 5th century BC, and most depict either her birth, emergence, or presentation to Epimetheus. In depictions of her creation, Pandora is usually depicted as either a statue-like figure surrounded by gods, or as a woman rising out of the earth, called the Anodos, or ascent in Greek, rising from the ground wearing a veil or a wreath as if she belongs to the earth, the clay from which she was made. Surrounded by mystical figures, sometimes she's surrounded by dancing satyrs, probably a scene from a lost play by Sophocles. Most of these decorated vases were a powerful visual way of telling her story on objects that were used in daily life. They would stand on tables of the symposia, telling the symposiasts something meaningful from a myth they already knew. It is significant, though, that there is no ancient Greek depiction of her opening the pithos, a large jar with a lid. Pandora was not defined by the moment of opening the jar or box, but painted as a special figure emerging into life and joining Epimetheus, celestial, desirable, crafted by the gods, gifted with every quality and sent into the world. She was a bridge between divine art and human life. It is marriage to Epimetheus that turns her from divine creation to a mortal wife, bridging the world of gods and humans, and setting the stage for the story of her jar.
So it wasn't a box at all, but a large jar. The box bit of the myth owes its existence to a mistranslation by Dutch Renaissance classicist Erasmus, yes, that one, who in writing the story in Latin mistook pithus, the type of large jar, for pyxis, a type of box. This may seem semantic, but as we will find out, it is actually meaningful. But let's park it for now. This total lack of any depiction of a myth claiming to be so foundational led scholar Jane Ellen Harrison to suggest that Hesiod's tale was effectively propaganda designed to justify more oppressively patriarchal structures. Author Robert Graves goes further, asserting it is not a genuine myth at all, but a misogynist fable probably invented by Hesiod. This lack of interest in attaching Pandora to a box or jar or vessel of some kind continued for over 2 millennia. A pair of influential Renaissance cataloguers of fables, Andrea Alciato and Gabriele Faerno, alluded to the myth of opening the jar with a focus on the meaning of hope staying behind. Neither of them names Pandora or any woman as the culprit. When the myth begins to re-emerge as an artistic subject, it does so in surprising guises.
One of the most fantastic depictions of Pandora in art is by El Greco, who is known for large-scale paintings generally, usually of religious figures, sometimes mythic. But there's 2 sculptures in the Prado in Spain, and one is of Pandora and the other is of Epimetheus. Now, what's astonishing about these sculptures, they're wooden, they're colourful, they've got amazing anatomical detail, such as pubic hair. The male sculpture got a kind of penis that's a normal size rather than a smaller Greek sculpture size, is that you also see the vulva on Pandora, and they are absolutely astonishing and very different to anything I've ever seen around Greek myth. Not only because they're colourful, but just the anatomical depiction of them. They look much more like the so-called medical Venuses that were kind of propagated in the sort of early 19th century, which showed a Venus as a woman and you take the organs out and stuff, which in itself was pretty hideous. But these are not hideous. They're actually rather lovely. They were done in about 1600 to 1610. And I think this is important in terms of thinking about when this myth comes back into being in the modern age. I've not found any depictions of Pandora and Epimetheus from the late Renaissance or even the medieval period, which is often when you start to get Greek myths coming back into being depicted in Europe. She starts to come into sort of literature and art in the 17th century. And it's really interesting that these kind of El Greco statues, which are really unusual and rather stunning, are from this beginning period.
The other very notable feature of those sculptures, it is Epimetheus who is holding the jar. In fact, as the myth re-emerges in art, it is more often than not his jar and him opening it. This is the case in the 16th century engraving by Giulio Bonassone and the 17th century etching by Sébastien Leclerc. So when and why does that change? Well, if the arts were not interested in Pandora, another field very much was theology. Bishop Jean Olivier's 1541 poem Pandora conflates the story with that of Eve to support his central thesis: women are the honey trap that draws men to sin. 3 years later, theologian Leonard Cullman writes an epic tragedy on beautiful Pandora that arrives at the same conclusion. The Pope's appointment of notorious clergymen Heinrich Kramer and Jakob Sprenger as inquisitors results in the 1486 publication of the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, a sort of manual on how to identify and punish women practicing sorcery that deploys every misleading Pandora-Eve crossover in order to ultimately conclude that all women are, I quote, beautiful to look upon, contaminating to the touch, and deadly to keep. The manual is updated continually and republished 36 times in the following 2 centuries, and is in part responsible for the moral panic about witches spreading throughout Europe, including to Protestant Northern Europe and the Americas. Its last such update takes place in 6069, 2 years from the publication of Paradise Lost.
At this point onwards, 17th century, when the Pandora myth becomes more important in art, it also becomes more important in literature. John Milton takes the motif of Pandora for Eve and Paradise Lost. In fact, he describes Eve as more lovely than Pandora. So Eve is even more beautiful than the most gifted woman made by the gods to be the most beautiful woman. And it's really here that we have this equation of Pandora bringing the evils with Eve's biting the apple and then offering it to Adam. Paradise Lost is the main one, really, in which she's referenced. And there's a part in book 4 when the devil is side with envy and he says, all is not theirs, it seems. One fatal tree there stands of knowledge called forbidden for them to taste. Knowledge forbidden. And he talks about how he can basically get through Eve. It's in that point that the box is equated with the apple. And I think this is important because it gives a different ethical sense to what happens when you open the box. What is evil to the ancient Greeks is probably not what's evil to John Milton. There's a Christian sensibility put on Pandora's box. That's why I think in the 19th century in particular, you get this symbolist image of a naked woman or scantily clad opening a box. Because it tends to be about going from a young to an older woman, the idea of maidenhood, to not being a virgin anymore. All of these things are sort of around this box because it becomes the idea of knowledge, and it's sexual knowledge, it's carnal knowledge. Whereas I'm not sure that's the same for the Greek world. And that's why it's also associated with Prometheus. On the other side of, yes, we have fire, expertise and creativity and all these things that we can do, we also have pain and we have death and we have grief. But that's part of being human. So part of opening this jar is our own humanity. Without those emotions, we don't have the other side. So there's this double bind that I think is undermined by the Christian ethics put on the box of Pandora.
What is even more fascinating is that this is not one-way traffic. As theologian William E. Phipps's brilliant essay Eve and Pandora Contrasted demonstrates, initially it is Hesiod's version of Pandora, the notion of woman bringing the end of a golden era for man, that influences the way Judeo-Christian scripture is interpreted through the Hellenization of Egypt and the Middle East by Alexander. Eve's crime is precisely the same as Pandora's, who refuses to live with Schrödinger's cat simultaneously dead and alive. The contents of the box are neither good nor evil until the box is opened. Pandora, precisely as Ruth explained, takes control by breaking the rules. Is Eve showing weakness by taking a bite, or is she being assertive? In the original book of Genesis, Adam is present during the entire encounter with Lucifer as a snake. He is silent but complicit and willing. During this early Christian period, Adam disappears from the episode altogether. Eve is now solely responsible and goes on to seduce and defraud him into taking a bite. Dozens of pseudepigrapha, quite literally fake bits of scripture purporting to be gospel, begin to circulate and are absorbed into early Christian teaching in the 1st and 2nd centuries. They include the assertion, for example, entirely baseless in scripture, that Cain, who kills his brother Abel, is actually the child of Eve with the serpent. As male church figures panic about the prominence of early women Christian leaders like Phoebe, apostles like Junia, and missionaries like Priscilla, they carefully paint Pandora onto Eve, onto all women, in ways so deliberate and insidious that the most accurate description is a smear campaign. Tertullian in the 2nd century, considered by many to be the founder of Western theology, tells women, God's sentence on your gender lives on. You are the one who opened the devil's door. Opening a door, of course, is a Pandoran image, unrelated to eating fruit. One of the most revered figures in the Orthodox Church, John Chrysostom, declares, women taught once and ruined everything. What happened to the first woman justifies the subjugation of the whole sex. It seems to me no coincidence that when the same thing begins to happen in the 13th and 14th century, Pandora, unlike other myths, is reanimated and reabsorbed not with creative aims, but with a religious agenda. Pioneers like Betticia Gozzadini, Dorotea Bucca, Constanze Calanda, and Luisa de Medrano are beginning to shatter glass ceilings and establish an academic foothold for other women in law, medicine, philosophy, theology, especially in the universities of Bologna and Salamanca. Lay religious orders like the Beguines are thriving and offering girls an education. Women must be put back in their box, or jar, if you prefer.
Everybody says don't, everybody says don't, everybody says don't, it isn't right.
The point here is not to bash religion, nor is this a theology podcast, but to demonstrate the depth to which one chauvinist's rant about how man was happy before woman was sent to torment him, how it is she who tempts us to sin and damnation, how one woman is responsible for everything evil, has penetrated our cultural landscape. From Hamlet's "Frailty thy name is woman" to Andy Capp, from Lolita to reality show The Bachelor, from "'Tis a Pity She's a Whore" to Lulu.
9 times out of 10, lady, you are doing just fine.
They are exactly the tropes I satirized in the telling of Pandora's story, which bits were ironic and which were serious. We tend to suspend critical thinking when it comes to familiar stories.
Sometimes you have to start small, climbing the tiniest wall. Maybe you're going to fall, but it's better than not starting at all.
Listen, everybody, while I talk to the men. These women ain't treating us right, and it's a dirty, low-down sin. Somebody's spoiling these women. Man, it's so plain to see.
Yet, because Hesiod is the only complete surviving account, every single subsequent version of the story is informed by it. Of course, a source is better than no source at all, but here is a thought experiment. Imagine you are a historian in 3,000 years trying to understand race relations today, but the only surviving source is Tommy Robinson's Twitter feed.
She said, Scotch is all I drink. Somebody's spoiling these women. It's so plain to see.
As the wife of Bath asks, who painted the lion? By God, she says, if women had written stories, as clerks hand within higher oratories, they would have written of men more wickedness than all the mark of Adam may redress. Context matters, and here it matters in several ways. By folding Pandora into Eve and the idea of female wickedness, we cross-infect the myth itself with modern notions of good and evil that may not be present in the original.
It is essential to be conscious of the extent to which we have applied modern ideas of good and evil onto what is released from the jar. Many ancient philosophers, from the Stoics to Aristotle, Epicurus, and Plato, argued that life's challenges, human suffering, and even death were essential ingredients in the shaping of character and the cultivation of virtue. It was life's trials and its finite quality that gave it meaning. The Stoics, for example, saw adversity as a teacher, believing that enduring pain with wisdom and courage strengthens the soul. Aristotle emphasized that virtue emerges through practice and struggle. One cannot become courageous without facing fear, cannot become just without confronting moral dilemmas. Plato, through Socratic dialogues, suggested that the challenges of life are opportunities for the soul to attain knowledge and goodness. Even Epicurus and the Epicureans, often associated with pleasure, argued that understanding and overcoming natural fears of death, pain, and loss leads to a deeper appreciation of life's gifts. In this way, the Pandora myth mirrors that of Prometheus. His suffering and sacrifice are the source of his nobility. They enhance his humanity. Humanity's suffering is what pushes it to evolve. It elevates humans towards divine qualities.
Indeed, human curiosity itself becomes a bad thing, especially when the story is addressed to children or young adults.
In children's stories, Pandora has become a cautionary tale about the danger of curiosity. In the 19th century retelling by Nathaniel Hawthorne, in A Paradise of Children, Pandora opens the box, but Epimetheus is also just as curious to find out what's inside. He wonders if there might be valuables in the box that he could take half of and share with Pandora. He doesn't try to stop Pandora from opening the box. And so, as Hawthorne writes, whenever we blame Pandora for what happened, we must not forget to shake our heads at Epimetheus likewise. In Carolyn Hennessy's 21st century version of the Pandora story for children, published as Mythic Misadventures, a series of short novels, the message is that if you make a mistake, you must take responsibility for your actions and try to put it right as best you can. Teenager Pandora opens the box through her curiosity, though her father Prometheus tells her not to do it, and is tasked by the gods to put the evils back in the box within a year. The first book in the series is Pandora Gets Jealous, and she must retrieve jealousy and put jealousy back in the box. Pandora can be redeemed after the initial act of opening the box, because she can become its guardian and prevent it from being opened again. In the Xena Warrior Princess episode, Cradle of Hope, the granddaughter of Pandora is tasked with keeping hope within the box, keeping it safe by resetting the lock to the box every day. She's inherited this task from her grandmother, the original Pandora. She's rewarded for her diligence by being given what she really wants to care for, an abandoned child. In the Charmed episode, Little Box of Horrors, college student Hope becomes the guardian of Pandora's box when the old guardian's killed by a demon. Only Hope has the power to both open and close the box. This demon wants to use the box as a weapon, but safe in the hands of Hope, it will never be opened again.
In most tellings of the original tale, what flies out of the jar are external blights, disease, hardship, hunger, toil. In their modern versions, especially ones directed at children and young adults, this shifts to internal dangers like laziness, pride, jealousy, etc., sins, effectively. While I understand the need to temper children's curiosity with a respect for rules in order to keep them safe, infecting all of humanity with wickedness seems rather too harsh a consequence for getting into a cookie jar. Especially since, as Ruth explained, the breaking of rules is an essential part of growing up. It is also worth noting that in every case it is women's curiosity which is being condemned, and women who are made responsible for the consequences. Boys are inquisitive, girls are nosy, men are adventurous, women are meddlesome. Opera has taken up this attitude of women with some aplomb.
La donna è mobile,
Women are fickle. The Duke of Mantua has the nerve to sing, having seduced or sexually assaulted every wife and daughter that has crossed his path. He sings this in a cheap motel where he awaits his next victim. In Wagner's Lohengrin, the only question Elsa must never ask of her husband-to-be is what his name is and where he comes from. That doesn't seem like such an unreasonable request when you're about to marry someone. So, of course, she asks the one question she's been told she can't, and he leaves her to die of a broken heart. What a mensch. A woman is a sometime thing, sings Jake and his poker buddies to his baby son as a lullaby in Gershwin's Porgy and Bess. A glimpse into the actual moment of sexism being passed from father to son like a baton in a toxic relay race. And in Berg's Lulu, based on Wedekind's play Pandora's Box, having destroyed the lives of all the men around her basically by enjoying sex, she travels to London in order to be slaughtered at the hands of Jack the Ripper. "I am very drawn to you," she tells him. "Don't make me wait any longer."
Don't you never let a woman grieve you, just 'cause she's got your wedding ring. Oh,
And if you think this is all just historical, well, let me tell you, the same play was turned into a famous silent film in 1929 by G.W. Pabst called Pandora's Box, starring a teenage Louise Brooks. When Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark wrote their tribute to Brooks, called Pandora's Box, it included the lines, "Only 17 when all your dreams come true, but all you wanted was a man to undress you." And that was in 1991. Which brings us all the way back to Debbie's Gothic novels and the one area you cannot enter trope. The person setting the limits is almost always a man. This one thing is forbidden. Pandora, Psyche, Eve, Jane, Belle, Elsa, Lulu, and the second Mrs. De Winter are told. It begs the question, why? What is he hiding in there?
Another way of interpreting the jar is that the jar represents consciousness. So sealed containers may represent sort of the hidden contents of our psyche, our repressed fears, our impulses and our emotions, and those unknown parts of ourselves. And so opening the jar is like opening up the unconscious. Once the awareness arrives, you can't put things back in the jar. And I see this all the time in therapy. Usually midway through a therapeutic relationship, there comes a point where a person would say, "I wish I hadn't started this," because it brings up so much. For example, it's the same when you're training to become a therapist. Because you have to work on yourself so much, you become very aware of your own issues and you start seeing those of the people around you. And there is a point, I certainly experienced in therapy traumatic, where I almost felt like, I just want to put the lid back on the jar, because it can be incredibly painful to become aware of one's own pains, hurts, traumas, and those of those around us as well. And so psychologically, opening the jar might represent the sort of shock of self-awareness, the eruption of repressed material, and this transition from innocence to knowledge. I've witnessed it hundreds of times in my work. We often talk of light bulb moments, but actually it can feel like a thunderbolt cracking above your head instead, that when you realise something and you are able to view it from a fresh and different perspective, it can be a psychological shock, an emotional shock, and also a physical one. You know, sometimes people will have a physical reaction, if that's breaking down crying, or it might be laughing in recognition. It's a whole-bodied experience, becoming self-aware. And that can be beautiful, it can be a gift, but it can also be shocking and abrupt. The end result is that somebody, usually 9 times out of 10, feels better for becoming aware and developing that self-awareness. But it's not a smooth and simple process.
Nowhere is this noxious cocktail of misogyny and puritanism more expertly mixed than in the tale of Bluebeard, who had a bit of a reputation for murdering wives. When he marries again, there is one door in the castle that is out of bounds. If only that nosy woman didn't need to know everything, she could have lived a happy life of luxury with a serial murderer. In Bela Bartok's one-act operatic version of the story, the fourth wife, Judith, not by coincidence named after the biblical heroine who saves Israel by beheading the Assyrian enemy king, I'm sure, seduces, bullies, defrauds, and nags each key out of Bluebeard, who is presented as the victim of the story, incredibly. Each door that is opened is treated as a release, much like Jack the Ripper is seen by Lulu. Here we know what is behind the door, and still, confronted with this newlywed couple, we hope that it's all a colossal misunderstanding, malicious gossip, and a happy ending is in store. A happy ending is not in store. But Judith doesn't care. "Give me all your keys because you love me," she tells Barbe Bleu. She would rather know her consort fully than live subordinate and afraid. The trope is reversed in sitcom Friends, with Monica forbidding Chandler from unlocking the closet door at the end of the landing.
What are you doing?
Monica has a secret closet and she won't let me see what's in it.
Why not?
I don't know. What could she possibly be hiding in here that I can't see?
I don't know. Ooh.
And here we go.
I saw this movie once where there was a door and nobody knew what was behind it. And when they finally got it open, millions and millions and millions of bugs came pouring out and they feasted on human flesh. You know, it wouldn't kill you to respect your wife's privacy.
But even here, isn't that the joke? That Monica wears the trousers and Chandler, comically effete in his curiosity, is afraid of her. Certainly, in most cases, this is about male superiority, preparing young girls for the possible unpleasantness of marriage to an older man, the view of obedience as the only essential virtue in a wife, and man's dominion over physical property. And as Pandora re-emerges in 19th century art in the midst of what is a war against women, represented by Madame Bovary's and Anna Karenina's and Zola's Nana, having been reshaped by Christian morality and dyed in the politics of patriarchy, she's suddenly all about the box and the loss of purity that opening it brings.
What you tend to find in the arts is either the whole mythology of her being told, as John Flaxman does in his illustrations to the Works and Days and Virginie of Hesiod, in which he does the whole kind of myth right from her being sort of created as this poisonous gift for mankind and clothed by Athena and then brought down to earth by Hermes. And then he actually transports this into, because he's really a sculptor, I mean, he does illustrations and sculpture, and he makes also bas reliefs and sculpture out of this. So that's one way of doing it. And then another way is her with a box. And that's how she's mainly depicted in the 19th century. And that's probably the version that we know of her the most. Probably the most famous one is by Rossetti. And this is his first depiction of Janie Morris. Jane Morris is one of his best friend's wives, who was the pre-Raphaelite so-called stunner. And she's in this red flowing dress with her hair out, holding this box, which has got almost like incense steaming out of it. And you're not quite sure if she's opened it or if she's about to open it. The sense is that she has opened it. She looks sorrowful. There's this red evils of the world coming out of it. And sort of melancholic, this idea that she's now released something that can never go back in. And this is painted in 1871. Really just as an affair has got going and they're sexually involved with each other. And in the 19th century, this is very much how you get it. She's always with a box. She's either about to open it or she's just opened it. So Alma Tadema has her holding more like a jar with a kind of ancient Egyptian emblem on it. You have Henrietta Ray. She looks like actually a kind of early cinematic presence in this, holding a box that she's about to open. And then from 1896 in Waterhouses, literally she's in the moment of actually opening this box. And part of the reason she's so depicted, given there's not that much depiction of her beforehand in the late 19th century, is because she becomes a kind of part of the symbolist painters. You get this depiction of her as this kind of symbol. So it's more about her with the box. And in fact, there's a lost painting by Paul Klee, which I really love, which is just of the box, just of a kind of jar. And it looks like a kind of chalice that's used in ritual, golden and orange. The whole thing about the box becomes more and more important.
What happens next is quite remarkable. Pandora's box becomes its own creature, detached from her in all but name. René Magritte depicts a typically enigmatic bowler-wearing man that we see from behind coming from the country into a city in a painting called Pandora's Box. Modern artists like Gattegnos, Miller and Fornaro just paint the box, mysterious, floating in midair, maybe opened, maybe not.
In the 20th and 21st century, Pandora's box has the propensity for good and for evil. It can be a box of good things. And this idea of Pandora's box containing goodies has been taken up by Danish jewellery company Pandora. Pandora charms are seen to represent something good for the wearers. They hold personal and even secret meaning, commemorating important milestones and memories in the lives of the women who wear the jewellery. In video games, Pandora's box can also be a source of power and a source of evil. In God of War, the box contains the source of the god's power, and players must find out what's in it. They can gain power, but they also can set the evils free. In Borderlands 2, the player must open the vaults on planet Pandora. These contain gifts, but they can also contain monsters. Players will only know what the box contains when they actually open it. Pandora has over time become separated from her box, and the box is the thing that we all remember, whether we think it contains good things or evil things or a mixture of both. But what I'm more interested in is the character of Pandora and what happens to her after the box is open. So from the ancient versions of the myth, she just disappears from the story. But could Pandora, Hesiod's evil woman and the first of the evil race of women, could she actually be a force for good? And could she use her box for this?
Consider that trajectory for a moment. From ancient depictions of Pandora in her own right, her creation and marriage, to Pandora with Epimetheus and his container, to Pandora always with now her container, to just the container. It's like this damn container just needed to make a name for itself, attached itself to a famous woman, then discarded her. Remarkably, however, by taking the box away from Pandora, it is also taken away from sexual politics and their religious agenda. It is removed from notions of good and evil and goes back to its more ambiguous ancient function of containing the stuff of life, some of which is bad and some of which isn't, some of which escapes and some of which remains. But what exactly remains? Even the word hope contains benevolent connotations that are simply not there in its ancient equivalent, elpis.
Hope is actually not an accurate translation of the ancient Greek word and minor deity, elpis. Hope contains positive connections. Elpis seems a bit more complex. It is merely an expectation of the future, good or bad, and it often appears in funeral laments and gravestones or epigrams as the expectation of loved ones, frustrated or shattered by the death of the person being mourned. In this context, Elpis is the source of grief. In his play, Icetides, or the Suppliant Women, Euripides describes Elpis as a man's curse, but Pindar calls Elpis sweet in a surviving fragment, and Sophocles labels her golden in Oedipus Rex. In Prometheus Bound, Aeschylus incorporates both good and bad. Prometheus tells the chorus that his sin against the gods was that he saved humans from the paralyzing fear of their own mortality. When the chorus asks, how did he do that? He responds by putting blind hope in their hearts. So Prometheus sees hope as both foolish and necessary. So what did Elpis, hope, represent for humanity? Why is she trapped at the bottom of the jar in the darkest place? Is she really a positive expectation or a delusion, a lost cause? Is it a promise for the future? Is it the secret weapon against the unexpected? What if hope, just like Pandora and her jar, are part of the deceit? As an archaeologist, the more I see, the more I learn as years go by, I feel we should be humble in our way of interpreting the past. There are a lot of things we don't know anything about.
The psychological interpretation tallies with this ambivalence. Hope is not universally a great thing.
So hope is a really interesting concept in that it can be both seen as a protection, but also it can be seen as something that makes us suffer to keep striving. And in this way, it's really interested psychologists and psychotherapists. So one of the most famous psychological interpretations is from Viktor Frankl, who wrote about his experiences in a Nazi concentration camp. He says that hope is a meaning anchoring force. It gives us the capacity to orientate ourselves towards purpose that's beyond the suffering that we're currently experiencing. So it's necessary, and it's a protection against existential despair, that whatever we're going through that feels so desperate, we can look ahead and think better days might be coming, and that's necessary. It's not an indulgence. Whereas Snyder's hope theory sees the concept of hope as a pathway that allows our thinking to evolve, that we can imagine routes towards a goal. And so as a function, it helps us persist, it helps us problem solve, and it helps us adapt our coping mechanisms to whatever we're going through. On the other hand, Freud took a different point of view on hope. He saw it as a defense mechanism, something that we use to manage anxiety, but it can morph into a form of denial. I see in my own work the role of toxic positivity. People coming to therapy, they've usually lost hope or they are losing hope about something. But if they come in talking in Instagram quotes about how you've always got to look at the best side of life and everything's going to be sunshine and roses and just visualize a better future, that can be just as worrying, because it's often separating them and providing a barrier between reality of what they're going through, of being in their feelings, and this idealized future that might not be possible. And so hope is a very delicate thing. As Emily Dickinson said, it's a thing with feathers. It's very fragile, and the way in which we interpret hope gives it its meaning and its usefulness.
Now, philosophers have argued for centuries as to whether hope is a good thing or a foolish quality. If it is a good thing, what is it doing in a jar of all ills? And does trapping it back in the jar mean that it is saved or denied to humanity? Friedrich Nietzsche argued that Zeus gave us hope because he wanted us to keep being tormented, and called hope the most evil of evils because it prolongs man's torment. Hesiodic scholar Martin West counters with a compromise. It makes perfect sense, he says, for curses to roam the earth while hope stays behind. The essential quality of the former is that they are chaotic forces which may strike at any moment, while the latter is a thing that is always with us. My own suggestion is that there may be nothing left in the jar, and that it doesn't matter. By resealing it, its former quantum status is restored. The cat is back to being both dead and alive. Maybe there was more painful stuff that we cannot even conceive of, which never managed to escape. That is hope. Maybe there is a bunch of good stuff that we get to keep. That is hope. Now that the bad stuff is out in the open and itemized, not knowing is a source of hope. This is when it becomes important that, in fact, it is not a box, but a large earthenware jar with a lid. This is a symbol that actually is connected with elements of the myth in sources other than Hesiod. Homer describes two large jars in Zeus's palace, one filled with blessings and the other with curses, into which the god dips for what to throw at mortals. The Aesopic version of the myth talks of a jar that contains all blessings, and a foolish man taking off its lid and only closing it with hope remaining. The poet Theognis, around 550 BCE, hints at the same myth in his elegies, suggesting sacrifices to Elpis, since she is the only blessing that stayed behind when all the others flew away. So what might the jar stand for?
Pandora's jar, or pithos, was more than a simple container. It held both life and death. In ancient times, a pithos was a large earthenware jar with a heavy lid, and it was often used to store essential goods, life-giving provisions like grain, oil, wine. Yet, pithi were also often repurposed for burials or cimata grave markers in most ancient Greek cemeteries, especially for infants and children, linking them to both vitality and mortality. This is interpreted by many scholars as highly symbolic, a return to the womb of the earth, a protective vessel for the child's journey. Pottery was also an important part of the afterlife rituals, carrying the liquids or the food to be offered as libation in memory of the deceased. This view of the pithos as life-giving and death-containing also tallies with many modern interpretations that see Pandora's jar as a symbol of the womb, with its contents, human descendants, bringing both pain, worry, vulnerability, but also hope for the future, the possibility of renewal. The fact that Pandora turns from immortal to human at the moment of her marriage is also significant in this respect. Modern notions of motherhood tend to emphasize the aspects of it which are a blessing, but in antiquity, having and raising children was a dangerous business. A woman entering her childbearing years was the riskiest period of her life, and child mortality was pretty high. Some estimates put the chance of a child dying before the age of 10 as high as 50%, and 1 in 3 women died during their childbearing years.
This makes complete sense when one considers how all the stories imprinted with Pandora are in part about female sexuality. That is the curiosity we are talking about here. The moment the king bans every phallic spindle from the realm, you know Aurora will look for one. Interestingly, in Perrault's version, when she sees one, she's struck by it because she has never seen one before. Is sexual education better than enticing prohibition? Just before Mina's sexual awakening with Count Dracula in Nosferatu, F.W. Murnau puts up an intertitle that reads, "Mina had promised never to open the Book of Vampires, but she couldn't resist." As critic Bram Dijkstra writes in Evil Sisters, Pandora is a pagan Eve, a vessel made out of clay and sealed by opening her legs, into which men must pour themselves for the sake of reproduction. Women are both absolutely essential for the species' survival and resented for being essential.
One of the most striking things about Pandora's myth is that, very much like Eve, she's framed as being the bringer of chaos and danger. I think this is because women are seen, and to an extent still seen, as being dangerous and unpredictable outside of male control. But what Pandora specifically represents to me is the danger of womanhood. If we think of the jar as a symbol of the womb itself, therein lie all sorts of dangers for a woman, whether that's menstruation and the pain that that causes, to childbirth and childbearing, that actually still today having a baby is an incredibly dangerous and risky thing to go through. Now, of course, things are much, much safer now than they were even 100 years ago, let alone in ancient Greece. But the idea that when a woman has a baby, this jar that she contains within herself, the womb itself, it can lead to all sorts of disruption in a woman's life. And it can be anything from the dangers of childbirth itself to the loss of identity when one becomes a mum, no longer referred to by your first name. You might have to change careers or change friendship groups. It's a real disruption in it. So its own way, the jar of the womb can bring its own chaos into a woman's life. Pandora is blamed for suffering that is released upon the world through the opening of the box. In the same way, women are still blamed culturally for their children's behaviour. So if you have a child that's gone off the rails, society still looks towards the mother to say, what did you do? And it really puts me in mind of mothers in the 50s, 60s, 70s who had autistic children, and they were termed by psychologists as refrigerator mums, because it was seen that they were so cold and so emotionally distant that this had caused their child's autism. And of course, we know that's complete rubbish, but the default setting is still to blame the woman. And Pandora really encapsulates that onus of responsibility that is placed upon women, and mothers in particular.
As Jungian analyst Clarissa Pinkola Estes puts it in Women Who Run with the Wolves, Bluebeard's last key is the key of knowing. It gives the heroine full consciousness. She can keep the door locked and live as an innocent maiden, or unlock the truth and become fully a woman. Is Pandora ruled by curiosity? Is Eve? Is Mina? Is Judith? Or are they just the ones who make a positive decision that needs to be made while the men around them dither? Sure, it is safer to never make a decision. Bad stuff sometimes happens, but also good stuff sometimes happens. If you never open a door, a box, a jar, a book, nothing happens. Is that safety, or is it terminal stagnation?
Like something that seeks its level, I wanna go to the devil, I wanna be evil, I wanna spit tax, I wanna be evil and cheat at jacks, I wanna be wicked.
Psychologist Bruno Bettelheim says the final key in Bluebeard, stained with blood, is associated with a male sexual organ. But if he is the key, she is the lock. The two are joint breakers of the prohibition that opens up the next part of the narrative. Together, they are a means of gaining access to the next room, seeing what is in the jar, taking the Tetris for a spin, writing the next chapter in our collective story.
I wanna be nasty, I wanna be cruel, I wanna be daring, I wanna shoot pool, and in the theater I want to change my seat, just so I can step on everybody's feet.
In Longfellow's Mask of Pandora, she tells Epimetheus that she wants to die, distraught at having opened the jar. What else remains for me, she asks. Youth, hope, and love, Epimetheus responds, to build a new life on a ruined life, to make the future fairer than the past. That, right there, is what is left in every jar. Pain, worry, sickness, vulnerability, grief, death, it's all out there, it's always been. We can let that rule over us, paralyze us, or hope that what comes next is better. It often is, you know. Podyssey is an audio production for Cooler Heads, written and presented by me, Alex Andreou. For an illustrated guide and an invite to the live Q&A for each episode, sign up now at ko-fi.com/Podyssey. Creative input, sage advice and expert contributions by 4 goddesses who inexplicably continue to make time for this hapless bard: Alexandra Angeletaki-Rö, Debbie Chalice, Amanda Potter and Dr. Ruth Smith. Music by Mariana Sanguita, artwork by Simona Canelu, additional research by Cosman Zakos. Alex Andreou's Podyssey is a Cooler Heads podcast.